So we're talking about the P75 Prelude in D major, which is on page 75, track 77. And we're having some difficulty because there are a couple of factors here. One is that the tempo that we're trying to play is very, very slow, 40 beats per minute. 40 beats per minute is below the normal pulse threshold that we have on our heads, which is closer to the heartbeat. 60 beats a minute, we have very little difficulty keeping that kind of tempo. But when we slow down much below a second per beat, it's very hard to hear it. So what we, as experienced musicians, do is we subdivide that in our head. So instead of 1, 2, 3, we're hearing 1 and 2 and 3. So the upbeat is very important. And when you're listening to a metronome, the metronome has no upbeat. If you watch a conductor, the conductor has an upbeat. Each beat, each downbeat, each upbeat. So you're getting 2 beats per counted beat in the measure. But the metronome doesn't give us that. So there are a couple of approaches that you can use to try to develop this inner clock that gives you the alternate beats and the further subdivisions. You may have to break it down into triplets or into 16th notes or further subdivisions. One way, the way that I have recommended as a training aid, but which Eckert doesn't like so much, is simply to double the metronome speed. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or whatever.
So one beat is a quarter note.
One beat is a quarter note is how this is written. We could make one beat an eighth note. And working musicians will often change what they're counting depending on the complexity of the material. If I'm playing some Bach fugue with 16th notes and 32nd notes in it, and I'm puzzling over the exact timing, I will slow down and count the 16th notes as one beat, or the 32nd notes even as one beat, to make sure that I understand the relationship. This is a learning aid. But it isn't necessary to do that. In this particular case, what we can do is we can count 1 and 2 and. That's perfectly fine to do. So 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Sorry, it's 4 beats per measure. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Notice that I'm continuing to count the ands, even though there are no notes, because the beat, the pulse of the beat is going on whether or not there are notes. You shouldn't stop counting the beats just because there are no notes. So in this case, if you don't want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, this is your judgment, but at least count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And that way you can be sure that you get the full 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, as opposed to what you were sometimes playing, which would be 1, where the eighth notes are much too fast and the quarter notes are too slow. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Now, the next question then is, what speed do you set the metronome? And there is no advantage that I see in setting the metronome to the quarter note. The quarter note is only the choice of the person who notated this music, and it's a notation convenience to communicate to you. It is not an indication of anything about the music. So my suggestion would be, try it both ways, sometimes having it at the quarter note, sometimes having it at the eighth note, sometimes having it at the half note. You should be able to play with the metronome at any of those.